Good morning, DJ and PK. It's 97.5 The Zone. Welcome in on a Wednesday morning. We got a lot to get to. Utah Jazz lost to the Denver Nuggets last night. Made it close late in the third quarter, but when the champs put their stars back in the fourth quarter, that game ended pretty quickly. We'll get to the Best of the Jazz postgame show coming up. Only 3 games left in the season. The Masters is about ready to get going. Brian Taylor joined us late in yesterday's show. We'll let you listen to part of that interview. Right now, Brian Taylor from Augusta, Georgia, and the Masters.
When you have other huge sporting events, people will mill around the area. You know, if it's a baseball stadium downtown, there'll be thousands of people there, and many of them aren't actually going inside the venue to watch the game, but they're still hanging around. And I've never been to Augusta. I'm wondering, do people congregate there? Is that possible? Because I don't even, I've just seen the Magnolia Lane and all that, to where there's people there who actually won't ever go in to watch, but they want to be there because that's sort of the place to be at that time?
It's an interesting question and an interesting time to ask that question. So they do have hospitality off-site where different hospitality corporations have bought up homes in the neighborhoods surrounding the gates here at Augusta National, and they've created these hospitality areas where they have food going and big TVs and bars and lounge, and, you know, it's kind of set up like a sports bar hangout kind of thing, something similar to what you'd see outside a baseball stadium or something like that. And Augusta National just announced this year they've got a new venture called Map and Flag. You got to look this up. So obviously that describes the logo, right? The map and the flag. And it's going to be their own Augusta National hospitality. And they've bought up this, as they continue to buy up the property surrounding the club, they've bought up what was formerly, I think it was a call center or something, a fairly large-sized building. And they have turned it into essentially a giant sports bar with its own merchandise facility, and, you know, the umbrellas that you see behind the clubhouse with that seating and things like that. So you can actually participate in an Augusta National hospitality situation where you can do that very thing, hang out. You're outside the gates, but you're kind of taking on that whole Masters experience. Now, the hospitality does come with, obviously, the option to buy tickets into the tournament as well and things like that. But it is interesting. Otherwise, I would say I think some people, they come in hopes of being able to get a ticket. I've seen fathers and sons, you know, wandering around hoping to get a ticket and things like that. They're pretty strict on resale and where you can do it and how close to the club. And so it tends to get further and further away from the gates. But I think there are a few people that make some pilgrimages here hoping that they might just get lucky and somehow be able to get a ticket that they can afford to come in last minute. But otherwise, I wouldn't say Augusta, Georgia is one of those just sort of hangout places if it's not directly for the Masters.
How about like just July? Are there people who do that?
Yeah, no.
Is there stuff to see then?
So I've been involved in, no, there's nothing to see. In fact, when you drive by, I've talked to some of the local guys, media guys here, and Magnolia, so all around the club, it's basically, you know, this bamboo wall that goes around. You can't see anything. And when you drive by Washington Road where Magnolia Lane is, there's a little sign that just says Augusta National members only. And then there's, you know, you can see where you turn in by the little guardhouse, and they have bollards up there blocking Magnolia Lane. You can't just like do a quick try to run down Magnolia Lane. Oh, no. But they told me that they actually, so the club's closed during the summertime. They close from like middle of May, end of May till October. And that I guess this year they actually put that green screen fencing across the front of Magnolia Lane. So you literally drive by, you can't see anything. So there you go. Yeah, nothing really to see if you're here outside the week of the Masters.
So there's nothing formal, because like if you go to Fenway or Wrigley or something, you know, you can do a tour on an off day. You know, the team can be out of town or even in the off season, but there's nothing like that. Not official, not crashing, you know, not crashing. It's an official thing. You pay your $20 or whatever.
Right. No, they don't have that. In fact, they used to have on the one near the one entrance, there was an outside, they call it an outside pro shop. And you could actually walk up, even if you didn't have a ticket, you could walk up and buy a hat or you could buy a shirt or something like that. And they've done away with that. So, yeah, there really isn't any sort of, unless you're a ticketed patron, there really isn't anything for you to do here.
What's the weather situation like?
little bit of rain this morning. It's interesting because we were listening to Xander Schauffele yesterday in his press interview, and he said the golf course is as firm as he's seen it in years, and he absolutely loves it. I mean, balls are rocketing over when it hits into greens if you're coming in too hot and things like that, and he thinks that's the best way that Augusta National can play. But as you know, literally every year for the last 5 or 6 years, we've had a little bit of interruption in play because of weather, and he said it's unfortunate. It looks like it's going to rain on Thursday, and sure enough, this morning we woke up, there was a little bit of rain that fell. I don't think it's anything significant that's going to affect the softness of the golf course, but Thursday morning is looking pretty serious. 88% chance of thunderstorms, going to work through most of the morning and early afternoon. So I suspect the way it's headed anyway, that's likely to get if it doesn't delay play, to soften up the golf course somewhat on Thursday. But nice sunny days the rest of the week, so hopefully the sun will bake it and firm it up again, and it'll be an awesome weekend. But, I mean, it's always good, right? You hear about the sub-air systems. You hear about all the things that they put into place so that they can not have play be affected too much. But at the end of the day, it's outside, so Mother Nature definitely has its way.
Let me ask you, for the 10th year in a row, what are the odds of Rory winning and completing the career slam? Is this just turning into a huge gorilla on his back here?
Absolutely. I think the longer it goes on, the tougher. I was talking to some of the my friends at the BBC that sit just next to me, and then we were talking about Rory and even one of the guys that is with Ireland Radio, and he's like, "Look, I love Rory. I love him. He's a great guy. He's given us a lot of excitement, a lot of work over the years." But he said, "I just don't see it happening." Last year when he sat in his interview, he was the most confident. And I think I came on here and talked to you guys about that. That's the most confident I've heard Rory in his opportunity to complete the career Grand Slam ever. I'm like, well, this could be the year. This is it. I mean, this guy was on point. He was unflappable. He missed the cut. So it's hard to say. The Ireland guy said he was requesting a 15-minute interview, that he wasn't doing any outside interviews. So he's kind of taken the opposite approach after a couple of years of being the face for the PGA Tour and kind of carrying that mantle in this battle with Liv and all that kind of stuff, that, he's wanting to keep it a little more on the down low, keep to himself, not maybe have to answer all the questions, take all that time, add the pressure that comes from having to answer the questions and so forth. So we'll see. I mean, everybody, it's interesting to listen to the players when they come into the interview room and they talk about their process for preparation for trying to win the Masters. And Victor Hovland was just in here, and his whole process was focused on swing and what do I do with my swing? What am I working on in my swing? Yada, yada, yada. And really very little to do with how do I unlock the golf course? How do I attack Augusta National? How do I win here? And so I'm like, well, is that the right approach? Focus on swing, not necessarily golf course. Other people, they're focused on how to unlock the golf course, how to play it, things like that. So everybody has their own approach. And as far as Rory goes, I mean, Bob has been touting Rory for so long. I mean, to be one of the few that win the career Grand Slam would be a terrific story. And everybody really tends to love Rory McIlroy. So I don't think there'd be anyone that would be sad about that, but maybe outside of Greg Norman. But other than that, I just think it's going to be a tough order. I think he's one to watch, but I think it's going to be a tough. The longer it goes, the tougher it is.
I saw a picture on social media, April Fool's, and it was Rory in a green jacket.
That's brutal.
I know.
That's brutal.
I thought it was very cruel when I saw it, but I did smile. I have to admit, I did.
You smiled at cruel? That's also real surprising. Yeah.
And it did at least elicit a chuckle. I mean, I don't root against Rory by any stretch, but I thought it was a little bit sarcastic.
But you love irony.
Yeah, I got it.
Sarcasm.
I mean, and it was that's why, yeah. But it was mean, but he's still young enough. He still has some time on his side to get the job done. Is there any overriding storylines this year? Because a lot of times you go into it, whether it was Tiger or somebody else, and you got to live and all that stuff, and Rahm's defending champion, and he defected and all that. So I'm just wondering, is there a single overlying storyline that people are talking about?
Yeah, I mean, that was one. As we were sitting here talking, John Rahm was actually in the interview room, and I'm shocked. Like, the media's done. They're out. That must have been the shortest defending champion press conference maybe in the history of defending champion press conferences. I expected that we would be done and I would catch the second half of that interview. When I turned it off, listening to it up here in our little seat here in the press area, in the seating area, they were right in the middle of asking him about his decision to go to Live and any regrets and all that kind of stuff. So that's where it was. And that's where, it went right to that, right? And now it's done early. That was maybe 10 minutes. So kind of surprising, but that's a big storyline. I think, everybody wants – it's less of a story. I would say the feel is less than it was a year ago when all these guys were coming together for the first time, right? Then this year it's like it's happened a few times. Brooks already won the PGA, all that kind of stuff. So it feels like that's a little bit less. Other storylines, Scotty Scheffler is a big storyline. He and Nelly Korda, both number one players in the world, both had opportunity to win 3 in a row. And Scotty misses a short putt in Houston to miss a chance to get into a playoff and try to make it 3 in a row. Nelly wins 3 in a row, then makes it 4 in a row this week. So, yeah, so it's pretty cool to see what Nelly's done. But Scotty, look, coming in here, having won 2 years ago, having won 2 of his last 3 starts with a second in the other one, and one of them being the Players' Championship. Scotty's he's the number one player in the world, and he's an outright favorite. That's not always the case coming in here, and so I think that's a big storyline. That's probably what I would have on, Rory trying to complete the Kerr Grand Slam in year 10. John Rahm is the defending champion and live defector, and Scotty Scheffler coming in world number one and the guy to beat. So I think those are, and then look, obviously Tiger, and I'm sure you're going to ask me about Tiger, but Tiger's he's looking for 24 consecutive cuts made here at Augusta. That would be a record. He's tied right now at 23 with a couple other players, and so if he is able to make it to the weekend, he will have the most consecutive cuts made here in the Masters, in the history of the Masters. So that's a little storyline to watch, see if he can get to the weekend.
There's Brian Taylor, part of that interview. If you want to hear the whole thing, you can go to wherever you get your podcast, listen to the entire thing. And Bob Casper is going to join us from the Masters coming up at 8 o'clock. Bob and Brian doing Real Golf Radio Saturday mornings here on The Zone. We're going to take a break, come back with the Best of the Jazz postgame shows. Stay with us. Good morning, DJ and PK. It's 97.5 The Zone. DJ and PK proudly presented by Murdoch Hyundai, Utah's number one Hyundai dealer for 18 years in a row. It is time now for the Best of the Jazz post-game show after they get beat by the world champs, the Denver Nuggets.
It's your Jazz recap here on DJ and PK on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Jake Scott with you. The Jazz followed in the Nuggets last night, 111-95 at Delta Center. Now only 3 games left. One more home game for the Jazz in this season. The Jazz were led by Taylor Horton-Tucker, who had 24 points in the loss, 10 of 23 shooting coming in off the bench. Omer Yurtseven had 20 points and 11 rebounds. Luka Šamanić got the start in place of Colin Sexton, who missed the game because of illness. He had 15 points, 10 rebounds, a double-double for him. But both Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic had 28 points for Denver in the win. Jokic also had 13 boards and 7 assists. Let's get to the post-game sound. Let's start things off with Jazz head coach Will Hardy.
It's a really good team we just played, and they set the tone in the first quarter. And I thought the middle part of the game, we actually played really well. And then in the fourth quarter, we started off and we were playing pretty well. But, the one pocket of time that highlights what I've been talking to you guys about and to the team about pretty much all year about thinking as a group would be coming out of a timeout. We subbed Omer in there in the fourth quarter. And we talked about, hey, this is a good opportunity to use Luka and Omer and try to punish the switch a little bit on the inside. And we came out of the timeout, and Luka scored twice in a row in the post. He showed good physicality, took his time. Luka hasn't gotten a ton of opportunity this year. The first half was a little skittish, but he settled in, and he scored twice in a row in the post. And then after those 2 possessions, we pretended like Luka didn't exist. And Luka pretended like he didn't exist. And I think in those moments, that's where you see the really good teams, the teams that are thinking as a group and feeling the moment and understanding what's going on, they're going to ride the wave. And it's like, I got Luka scored twice in a row in the post, we're going to him again. Screen switch again. And we're going to keep going. There's a lot of examples out there in the league of teams that do that. I think Steph and Clay are probably two guys that have been the two best ride the wave players of this generation. If Clay hits two in a row, Steph won't shoot. And I think that's what we're hunting, is that level of awareness as a team to understand in that moment where our advantage is. Each game presents different things, and the way we are built right now, the advantages may be different each night where we can go with the ball to try to squeeze the game. And it's about recognizing what that is in the moment, everybody communicating amongst each other and all being on the same page, because it's another night where there was a lot of good basketball I thought our team played tonight. We just have some stretches where we sort of lose the plot.
What do you want Luka to do in those situations?
I want Luka to, the third possession after that, Luka had Reggie Jackson in transition and just sort of stood next to him. I would like for Luka to duck in and put his arm up and demand the ball. In some ways, you can get in the way and make it obvious that you want the ball. It's everybody. It's Luka included. But that just stood out to me as a moment where it was going pretty well and we were playing pretty well, but then we weren't all quite thinking on the same page. And that's not one person's fault. That's the whole team. And that's, the sentiment. I just feel like that highlighted something I've been talking to you guys about all year, about thinking as a group and problem solving as a group. And can we recognize that on the fly without having to take a timeout, talk about it again? That's the level that we're trying to get to.
Do you think that you guys have improved in those situations, or do you feel frustrated that you're still having to do that?
I don't feel frustrated. I think as a team, it's gotten better over the course of the year. But I think these are the moments where you feel, or I really feel like in that moment there was a lineup on the court that has not played very much together this year. And so thinking as a group, communicating as a group, all seeing it the same, when you're playing with even though they're teammates and they're all in the room together, it's a lineup that hasn't played a lot together. And so, you see teams where the same five guys play together for a while, they kind of recognize what they all bring to the table and what the advantages might be, what they might be looking for. So I don't feel frustrated. It's just it's a good teaching point for our team of this is a great example of what we've been working on this year. So that hopefully, when we address that, if a couple of guys can learn that and have that absorbed, we're going to be better tomorrow than we were today.
How do you get your floor members to recognize the nuances, some of the nuances of the game that other guys wouldn't recognize, in terms of Luka scores twice, give him the ball, or somebody's running hot, give him the ball, things like that?
Yeah, I mean it's not just on the guys with the ball. It's the whole team. I really mean that. I think, I use the Steph and Clay example, but usually in those moments, if Steph had the ball, there's three guys running the screen for Clay. It's everybody recognizing that somebody has the hot hand. Luka has an advantage in the post. You flash up out of the corner to go get the ball so that you can be the one to feed it to him. But that, all that stuff is learned in film and practice in hard moments like this. And the hope is that if we have a moment like that next game, can we be 10% better at it? That's the growth that we're seeking, and it's good for these young players to feel those moments, because everything makes sense when we're in the team film room. It's quiet. Nobody's emotions are running hot. Nobody's overly tired. But when there's 18,000 people in the Delta Center and it's going and it's loud and it's chaotic and you've got adrenaline going, it's harder to think in those moments. And so I'm happy that we got to feel it in tonight's game.
I'm sorry to keep talking about this one situation that you brought up,
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that there's kind of a mental hurdle for someone like Luka? Like, yeah, he scored twice in a row, and like you want him to recognize like, yeah, I should be getting the ball again. But like, he's not a guy who's played a lot. Maybe he doesn't feel like he should be demanding the ball.
Of course, yeah, and that's where, I'll give Luka and I'll give the team some grace. Luka has not been a go-to guy for us this season. He's not. I'm using the Stephen Clay example just because it's one that we can all pop into our heads quickly. But he's not used to being in that moment, and so for sure there's some natural hesitance from Luka and from the team, and so I understand that, and that's why when you ask am I frustrated, I'm really not. It's just a good moment to teach that to them, where hopefully if it happens again, we can recognize it. But in that moment, I'm not like mad at Luka because he's not demanding the ball. That's not Luka's nature, and he really hasn't been in that situation at all here.
How much of that pattern recognition is innate, and how much can be taught?
Well, I think there's certain guys that it is innate. I think it's our responsibility to teach it. How quickly something can be taught and then put into the game, that's going to depend on the person. But there's all types of ways to address the problem. Obviously, when you're looking at bringing somebody into the program, you're evaluating a ton of different things. Pattern recognition, feel, when people use that term basketball IQ, which is very broad and no one really quite knows what it means, me included, that's kind of folded into that also. But that's where practice and film and watching the game on your own, you can learn some of that. I think I would be way more I'd be way more disappointed if I felt like it couldn't be taught, because then you'd be just kind of, well, this is who they are and this is where we're at. I've seen guys on our team improve a lot this year in terms of their understanding of the game. And these are a lot of young players. I think the way the league has sort of shifted, you've got players coming in younger and younger. Or there's more young players coming in. They're not necessarily younger. More guys at age 19, 20 who have a little bit less basketball under their belt as opposed to when it was all seniors coming out of college. I remain hopeful that it's something that can be taught, because I've seen improvement in our team.
What have you seen from Darius Baisley and his time with the Jazz, and kind of what do you envision the player that he can become? What do you hope that what role do you hope that he can be as he improves?
Yeah, I've really liked Darius. He brings an energy to the game. The thing first and foremost for him is I think he impacts the game defensively. I think he moves his feet well. He's got pretty good length. He communicates well defensively. Offensively, I see him being kind of like a point forward at times, where he can be a playmaker taking the ball to the second side. I think he's open a little bit more than he's getting the ball against switches in kind of that hit under short roll, the slip out. He does a pretty good job of that stuff. So I think I see him as, what number do you want to call him? It's hard to know what number anybody is now, but he's a sort of a playmaking point forward at times. Crasher, cutter, his shooting is improving. He's showing some confidence in his shooting. But, I think he's a pretty versatile player in this sort of era of basketball. He's switchable defensively, and he can do a couple of different things offensively. I think he's got a nice game.
Coach, what do you make of Horton Tucker's performance? What did you like? What did you didn't like today?
Yeah, I thought Talon, for a majority of the game, he was our best player. We were struggling to create advantages early in the game, and so I thought Talon came in, and his ability to drive the ball downhill is not something that's shocking to anybody in this room. I'm always going to be hard on Talon in terms of his decision making. I'm hard on him just like I'm hard on Keontae and Colin and all of our guards, because there's moments where we're probably towing the line a little bit, but I also recognize that it's when you're a driver, you have to push it to turn the corner in the NBA and get all the way to the rim. And so I thought he did a really good job tonight of, attacking the rim, especially in the first half. I thought he really kept us in the game. He, along with Keontae, like the turnovers are tough, especially when some of them are just kind of like we're bobbling the ball on our own, just a little bit loose with our handle and our pickups. But Talon has been sort of in and out of the rotation here the last week and a half. And so more than anything, I was just really happy with the fact that he was ready to play, both mentally and physically. I thought he played pretty hard.
That is Jazz head coach Will Hardy. Let's move on to the players. Time now to hear from Omer Yurtseven.
Omer, what makes it different guarding the Joker tonight?
It's just, I guess, his answers to almost everything. The best thing that they do is, I think, cutting off away from him whenever he goes. If you want to double him, we got him one-on-one. He got a couple buckets, I got a couple stops. But when we switch up the coverage and we try to double, he's great at making those reads. So everybody has to kind of be awake and not get back cut, because that's pretty much their style, to cut, get easy baskets, and he does a good job finding them.
What were some of your personal goals down the stretch?
I think it was just to get stops against him. I knew that we were going to facilitate through him whenever he's in the game, and I check in whenever he goes in. So I think it was good to just kind of get that feel initially, and then when he got in the first quarter, I had to kind of up the physicality because he was trying to go hard, knowing that he has to finish out the game and not give us a chance. And I was ready for that. It's just his experience is a lot more.
You guys gave yourselves chances in the second and third quarters. What do you feel like you guys kind of did after the first quarter to get back in the game?
I think we initially did a great job finding the roller, because as good as Jokic is as an offense, I think he's a little bit of a liability on defense, and I think that allowed us to kind of get the ball in the pocket, skip it to the corner, or if they take away the pocket, the guard can skip it to the corner. If they rotate to the corner, see the second pass to the wing. I think Key and Talon did a great job, first, second, and third quarters, finding those rotations and whoever's pulling in, making those punishment passes pretty much, and our guys did a good job knocking the shots down too, and I think that kept us in the game a lot. And then whenever they switched 1 through 5, me and Luka did a great job posting them up. I think he had 2 buckets in a row and then one more back to back where we were at a 6-point deficit at that point.
Will was actually talking about that stretch and kind of how that is kind of a microcosm of the challenges that this particular group faces. Guys who haven't played together a lot, trouble recognizing patterns, going away from Luka in the aftermath of that. How does a team like this, playing so many young guys, so many guys who are unfamiliar with one another, kind of bridge that gap towards getting that on-court recognition?
It comes off so simple that it gets caught in that camouflage, because it's so easy. If something is working, keep doing it. And I think we went away from that where we, like I said, we gave it to Luka 2 times. He punished it, and I duck in at the guard. We finish over the top, and we see that pattern. We shouldn't stop until I find an answer. And when I find an answer, you go to something new. It's keep doing it until, it doesn't work. And like I said, it's so simple that I think that's what makes it challenging to stay on it. You always want to we did that, now do the next thing. No, make them figure that out, make them find a solution. I think we'll recognize that greatly.
That's Omer Yurtseven. Let's now hear from Talon Horton-Tucker.
You guys never let up. As a vet, what are you saying to those guys, to the guys during those runs?
Just really to play hard, to continue, try to make the right plays, play the right way. Try not to get beside ourselves, even though it's a game of basketball, so just really trying to stay with it down the stretch. That's it.
What are the coaches preaching about development with just one game left?
Just really paying attention and locking into the smaller things, the things that the average person wouldn't pay attention to. But, as a player, you got to pay attention to everything. So, just really things like that. That's pretty much it.
Can I ask, Darius Baisley said you knew you from before now. How did you know him?
Darius was always one of the top players in our class growing up. And then one of my last tournaments at AAU, we became teammates. And then we both signed to Clutch Sports and coming out for the draft. So we basically lived together for about 4 or 5 months. And then, we both made it to the NBA. So, we're here now.
It's funny because he's had a crazy career, right? Like, have you watched that, and kind of what have you thought when he's, you get to play with him now over the last month or so?
I was just telling Keontae the other day, it's kind of crazy that, we are teammates now. Something you kind of dream of, like almost like childhood friends and people that you knew before. Like I knew Luka almost the same way as Darius before we got here. So being on the same team as him is always like full circle.
That's Talen Horton-Tucker, 24 points lead the way for the Jazz, but the Jazz came up short, lose to the Nuggets 111-95. Up next, the Jazz take on Houston in the final home game of the year coming up tomorrow night. That game will tip off at 7 o'clock. Pre-game coverage begins at 6.
There's the best of the post-game show. A reminder to join JJ and Alex live today from 3 to 6 at the Dish Bros, 8034 South State Street in Midvale. Also a reminder, the Talkback feature returns. We've got the mic, the open mic. If you go to our app, you can record up to 60 seconds of audio. Anything we're talking about could be the Utah Jazz, could be any of the topics we're discussing off our Facebook page, DJ and PK. Y'all can get them on the air. All right, DJ and PK, we're going to take a break right now. When we come back, we're talking college hoops with Tim LaComb, putting a wrap on the season. Stay with us. DJ and PK, it is time to welcome in the one, the only, Tim LaComb. And his interview brought to you by Spherion. Are you a business owner? You have better things to do than to job hunt or scramble to find your next great hire? Let Spherion Staffing and Recruiting do it. Visit Spherion online at spherion.com/Utah. Tim, good morning.
Good morning.
Did you find that NCAA championship game interesting, or did you find it completely predictable?
Well,
Interestingly predictable.
Yeah, but I was intrigued by it because I like those two big guys. That was kind of an interesting thing to think about, how both teams would approach that. But, if you remember when you guys asked me, I picked UConn. It wasn't It wasn't, remarkable, but I just felt like they were that much better than everybody else this year. And, man, their coaching's good. They are really into all the details and don't leave a whole lot to be desired. The thing that stood out to me was literally just on every catch. Every catch was contested. As guys tried to throw the ball in, the hands, active hands and ball tracing and constantly in a defensive stance. I mean, it was just really impressive all the way around from UConn this year.
Do you think that comparing to the NBA game, the traditional big man in which we know has been so important over the years but has been transformed at the NBA level, do you think it's more important at the college level? It seems that, not Kentucky, but UConn has that. And Purdue had it too, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to have a way to, I guess, two different things. You got to be able to protect the rim on the defensive side. And then I think offensively, you see in college a lot of different ways to play, but, bottom line is you want to get the ball into the interior, whether it be by dribble penetration or throwing that ball in a bunch. And certainly they've been able to balance, the offense. I think what really is underrated about them is the way that their defense fuels offense, the way they get out in transition and run. They definitely utilized all the big things a big guy can do, that rim protection, stretching the floor vertically on rim runs, and then, as always, just being able to post up and throw it down inside.
Watching that game, I couldn't help but think a little bit of Jerry Sloan, but it was a college game, so more of Rick Majerus, and I just wondered how much you flashed back on the defense, because a couple things that Majerus's best teams had is they never gave up, well, not never, but they rarely gave up easy hoops on 2, 3, or 4 consecutive possessions. If you got something easy off them, the next trip down, everybody knew we got to be great this trip, because otherwise there's going to be a timeout and we're going to get yelled at. And I thought there was really no stretch where it was easy, and it was so hard for them to drive the ball because you had to beat like 3 defenders to get to the rim, which is what I always thought about Majerus' best teams too.
I think the common thread is that, the guys that end up sticking with Hurley, the guys that end up sticking with Majerus, obviously talented players, and he said this, Hurley said this in his interview. I thought it was really kind of the moment of the whole season. The NIL has really created an environment, much like the pros, where it's all about, to about 85% of it, it's all about me. It's me getting my check. It's me getting my endorsements. It's me getting my money. So in that day and age, I think what Dan Hurley's done, and I think what Majerus did way back when, was he emphasized the team, and Dan said in his interview afterwards that, they really do a good job of recruiting NBA type players with the caveat that they're willing to give. They're willing to play for each other. They're willing to put their personal agendas aside and trust that a winning program will put them in, the best light going forward. And I think his words rang true last night. I don't know if you watched that game, but man, you covered a guy like Castle, who just every single play, man, he's in a stance and he's trying to sell out for the other guys on his team to win the game. So I think that of all the things UConn's done, I think it's that. I think they have figured out a way in a very me-oriented society to emphasize the team, and that's when basketball's played at its best.
Yeah, and he did say that, if you want to go to the NBA, do that team game and buy into it, and then you'll be appreciated more potentially, particularly, if you're not the greatest player in the world, that's the way you could do that. And I was fascinated by his repeated times he said that, because I can recall in his coach's office with Dave Rose talking about that very issue multiple times, and how it was so hard to get some guys at BYU who thought they should have been getting more stats, and it became a problem. And this is something that I remember him specifically pointing to, look at the premier players in our program, and he pointed to 2 banners that were outside his window overlooking the new practice facility, and it was Jimmer and Ainge, and they were players of the year. And, you're not going to get that, but if you want to win, that's the way to do it. And it seems so simple, but yet it seems that it's hard to get guys to do it because they're so involved in their personal stats.
Well, and for years, really, let's call it what it is. For years, these guys, particularly the high-level guys, are told how great they are, and they're given free stuff. And, the other element that Danny talked about last night that I think is so big is parents. When you recruit, are you going to recruit a kid whose parent is going to let you coach them? Or do they already have this preconceived idea that, oh, no, this is what my son does. This is what he's going to do.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I think that you're fighting a lot of that, but man, you can see the result when everybody just leans in. It's funny you mentioned Ainge's years and Jimmer's years. Yes, they had at least voted those years the best player in college basketball. But man, look at the supporting cast and look, I can speak to the Jimmer year. A guy like Jackson Emery doesn't come around very often. A guy who will do all of the dirty work, and get, not very much credit, but just continue to show up day after day for the team. Noah Hartsock the same, on that team. You just go right down the list. Charles Abua was built that way. So I think you could do that with
Logan
Magnuson. Logan Magnuson, all about that, right?
Logan catching strays.
James Anderson, if you're going to go there, come on, those were the 2 backup bigs when we lost Brandon.
Yeah.
But then I think, you look at Ainge's teams and obviously a ton of talent, but similar mindset, similar character, guys that are, really successful in life today, but were willing to give a little bit of themselves to the team for the betterment. And I think, man, I'd love to see the game take a major shift that direction.
Is that a desperate cry for help right there? Is there any chance that's going to happen, or is that just you begging the universe?
Oh, no, that was just a basketball therapist.
Okay.
Sits on a cloud and, spins a ball on his finger. You talk to him every now and again.
Do you have any confidence in what's going to happen in the transfer portal for the local teams, or is it all still a massive question mark in your mind?
I think it's always a question mark, but it's a major resource. Coach used to use the term with me, as we talk about recruiting, how many ponds, legitimate ponds, can we fish in and get, can we get good talent? And I think what the portal's done is it's really introduced every school to every player. It's a matter now of being able to talk guys into coming. But if you look around, I think that, BYU's used it very, very well over the last few years. And, I think the same could be said for Utah State, for different reasons. But I think it's definitely, Utah's had some success with it. It's definitely an opportunity to dip in there and change your team very, very quickly, add some age, add some experience. But you also have to understand there's 360 teams in there as well. So you've got to have a differentiator. And, that's where NIL comes in and all that sort of thing. But I think they'll have success because I think that's the way of college basketball now. I think you've got to dip into that. The key, I don't think you can be too heavy in the portal. I think you got to have some continuity. You got to be able to grow your culture and your program. If it changes every 8 months, that becomes an issue. I look at BYU right now, and I think they're in the perfect situation because they've got young guys who just played their tail off in a really competitive season, and they're headed, the majority of those guys are headed back. And so I think then you add upon where were we not great this year? What do we need to add? And, almost like a GM, and then go out and search that portal and find a couple guys interested. And again, it doesn't have to be the highest of the highest level, just somebody that can come in and fit, somebody can come in and accentuate what you're doing.
Well, yeah, you saw that with Alabama. They get a kid out of Northern
100%.
Colorado, and he's looking like a star. And he's making a major difference in their Final Four run. It's obvious. And so you can plug somebody up, and it kind of stinks that the lower schools, to an extent, become a farm system. But, that cat's out of the bag or whatever it is, and so you're not going to change that. I'm wondering, do coaches now have to massage the NIL in making sure you got egos involved? And you talk about the parents, and the parents are going to be there, and their kid is getting X amount, and then you just brought in somebody else who's not as good, but now he's going to get more. Has that become a little bit of a problem that they have to manage, another headache for coaches?
I would think so. I was worried about making sure the snacks were allocated correctly in my day. Everybody got the same amount of fruit chews in their bag. But now you're talking about a whole bigger issue. And I think anything where there's comparison, right down to, the shoes you got, the team gets. I think when there's comparison, I think there's always going to be a little of that. I will tell you this. The one thing as a coach that I've found is everybody likes to talk about their career. It doesn't matter who it is. And I would say it's borderline 80% of guys who got screwed by their coach.
Oh, for sure.
They would be, I don't, a number of times I talk to people and they're like, yeah, man, I was really good, but my coach and I didn't see eye to eye, so it's always been a thing. I think it'll always be a thing. There'll always be, because people have to make themselves, they got to live the rest of their life knowing, all right, what's the story I'm going to figure out here? But yeah, it's another huge headache. That was a very long answer to answer that question.
I can remember
a very big headache.
One year covering the Utes, that the first month of the season, Majerus kept complimenting one player, and he would just go overboard complimenting this player. Who was the good player?
Was he number 50?
I won't say his name. And
I know it was his number. I said his number.
Yeah, it wasn't Doliak, no.
No, Doliak was 51.
Oh, and then I don't remember who was 50. It was
the guy you talked about all the time.
Alex. This was, I think, I think Alex would have been gone, maybe,
okay.
Or maybe Alex was just a
now
freshman.
I got the second Alex then.
Yeah, and so he
Colorado kid.
He's just complimenting him over and over and over again, and I'm thinking, why is he doing this? I mean, you had some real big-time stars on the team, and this was a good player. And I went and asked someone, what is going on? He said, because the dad spent a whole lot of time in Majerus' office over the summer. And how come my kid's not getting the run that he should be getting? And so this was Majerus' way of giving the kid run by constantly bringing him up in the post-game press conference that he would do, and with a little meeting with the media in the squad room, and I say, okay, I got it now. I understand. He's got to massage the dad. Right. I get how this thing works, but it was confusing to me. But then I understood why Rick did what he did.
He's a good player, but now you're getting a lottery pick, another lottery pick, another lottery pick.
Right.
And you're like, well, he's not getting the run. Everybody's talking about the lottery picks.
Right. But this was a good player.
Yeah, I mean, he's just in that 80%.
Right, and the dad wanted to hear his name mentioned in the media, so he started mentioning his name more.
I'm going to tell you guys a funny story about. It's actually one of the best stories I've heard about parents the whole time I was in coaching. But I'm not going to use the name. But this is somebody that was a college head coach, and they had a kid come in on a visit. And when a kid comes in on a visit, one of the things you do, you get them with your guys as much as possible. Oftentimes they'll play, they'll play pickup and you'll have your recruit in there. I think one of the biggest farces ever was that coaches weren't able to watch, which I'm sure never went on. But in this instance, I guess, they went and did the open gym and then showered up and went to eat. So this is like day one of the trip, first afternoon, first evening. So they played, went to get something to eat, and they're at the table. And coach said, so what'd you think? What'd you think of the guys? Think of the team? And instantly, the dad went into this diatribe that, they looked his son off and they wouldn't include him. They wouldn't throw it to him. And, just instantly, like 20 minutes, just a victimhood. And so coach finally, the waiter came out and said, yeah, what can we get you guys? And he's like, well, I know we haven't ordered anything yet, but can I just pay for the reservation? We're done here. And he stood up, pushed the chair out and said, your kid ain't going to function well in this. You just spent 20 minutes talking to me about why it didn't work and why he wasn't included in the first 30 minutes. And he's like, I don't got time for this. And so he basically said, the visit's over. Enjoy your time here and make sure you get your flight so we don't get charged. And that was the last they saw the kid. And I loved it. I mean, you don't know the number of times I wanted to do something like that, but certainly couldn't. But parents need to take a major step back in the game, man.
Tim, we appreciate the time as always. Thanks for joining us. You're the man.
All right. Thanks, y'all.
Tim LaComb, Jazz radio studio analyst. You'll hear him on the game tonight. When we come back, what is trending? All the headlines next.